In this video, we'll explore frequency distributions, histograms, and pie charts. Now, a frequency distribution allows us to see how many of a group fall into each category. In this instance, we're looking at test scores. Now, one thing that's nice to do whenever we're trying to create frequency distributions is to first sort our data so that it'll make life easier to look at. So I'll go up to Home tab, and I'm going to highlight just the columns I want sorted, and I go to Sort and Filter, I custom sort, and instead of sorting by name, I'm going to sort by test score. Now, if for some reason you don't see these terms coming up, make sure you have this box up here clicked that says My Data Has Headers. That's always important to check. So now I can see everything is sorted by numbers, and of course it's got a corresponding letter grade. Now, in this case, the data is sorted so that an F is a 0 to 68, a D is the 69 to 76, and so on the 7-point scale that most schools use. Now, what I want to do is I want to know how many are there in each category. And I can go through here and I can count, but that becomes a little bit tedious, and Excel can help me with this. First thing I need to do is I need to actually split these up so that I have my lower limit and I have my upper limit. Now you see how the terms overlap each other? If I go between G and H and I double click, see how it's got that nice black line. If I double click, it pops it out so that lower limit fits in the entire box. And then go between H and I and do the same thing. Now maybe I want to know what's the midpoint of my class. So what's the midpoint value in this case for each of these? Then maybe I want my frequency, how many are in each category. And maybe I want my relative frequency. These are typically things that we put in a frequency distribution. And the relative frequency will give me the percent that falls in each category. So I know it was 0, 68, 69, 76, 77, 84. Now watch, here's a neat feature. I can highlight these two cells, or I can highlight all four, because they're now separated by 7 apiece. And if I go to that little black box and drag down, it fills in the rest of my data for me. Not a big deal when you have a small set like this, but if you get much larger, that can be a great feature that can be helpful. Now I want my midpoint of this class, so it's average, and I highlight the two values. Push enter. And again, I can just drag down. And that would be the midpoint of my values. Now for frequency, I could go through here and count and say, yes, there's 4 Fs, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 Ds, and keep going on and on. And that's fine because this data is relatively easy because I put the letter grades there already. But what I could also do is I could use the frequency option formula. So I use equals frequency, FR, and I get frequency. And I could use the formulas tabs at the top. Now if I read this, it says data's array and bins array. My data array is my data scores. Then I'll look up here, I'll put a comma. My bins array are my upper limits, and I have to select all of them. That's important. And I push enter, and see, it came out with 4 for my number of Fs. Now, here's an important piece to make this work. If I drag it down, you see it's not working because I don't have 7 Ds. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 Ds. So this isn't working the way it's supposed to. So I can't do it that way. What I have to do is I need to click in the white, and I need to highlight all 4 or 5 boxes in this case. And here's the weird thing, but this is how it'll work so it'll find the frequencies for me. If I come up here and touch the formula bar, it highlights my upper limits as well. And that's the important piece. Now here's to fill in the boxes. What I need to hit together are Control, Shift, enter. And now I have all of my sums, or all my frequencies for each of these. And I can check 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 C's. 9 D's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so it is doing it correctly. And if I ever want to double check, I can also do this. I can do the sum of my values and make sure it comes out to 29 people. And there are 29. Now my relative frequency is saying how many of the whole 29 have an F. So I'm going to use the formula. And I'm going to do a manual formula in this case. It's just my frequency divided by my total. That tells me how many are related to the F category. And then I can just drag that down. Now the reason this didn't work is because if you look, I used J9. And J9 is a cell. And if I want to use that over and over again, I have to remember to put in the dollar signs to lock it on that cell. Now if I go and drag, it gives me all my values. So about 14%, 14%, 21%, 31%, and 21% for each of my categories. So there's my frequency distribution. Now to create the histogram, if I want to create a frequency histogram, I highlight my frequencies, and I can come up here to Insert, and a histogram is a bar chart where all of the bars touch each other. So I'm going to do a 2D column. So there's my frequency distribution. But I need some more information. I need to look at more like a histogram. So if you look up here now, I've got chart tools. And under design, there are layouts. And if I click on that bottom, the best layout to use is layout number 8. It gives me the ability to make a title for each of my axes and for my overall information. So I can go through here and change the chart title. So this is test grades. My y-axis represents the frequency. And then my x-axis was grades by letter. And now I just need to actually fix a couple more pieces. So this is kind of hard to read, so what I do is if you look at the design, I have options for what the color should be. And I can go down and look at the different rows and find one. What I like to get is one of these that has like the white border, say like style 11. And what you'll see is it puts that thin white line so you can see what specifically falls in each group. Last thing I need to do is I need to change my horizontal, my axis values. So if I click on them, you see I got that little box around it. I can right click and I can select data. Now what I'm looking at is my horizontal labels that I need to change. If I hit edit, really what I'm looking at are letter grades. So I can click on my letter grades, or my letters here, and push OK, and push OK, F, D, C, B, A. I can see there's my data, and it's by letter grade. If I didn't want to use letter grade, I could always select data, click edit, and maybe I want to use the ranges, or the intervals. I can do that as well. 0 to 68, 69 to 76. See, I've got the intervals. Either way is perfectly fine. And there's not one way that's better than another. Now if I want to make a pie chart, I'm going to highlight my data, again, the frequencies. I go Insert, Pie, and I typically just use the very first one. Now I need to move it so it's off of my other set. So I'm going to put it over here to the side. Now it doesn't have a lot there. So again, I have chart tools, and I've got the design, and I can look at what design do I like the most. The one I often choose is layout number 6. Now the reason I like layout 6 is because it gives me both the chart, gives me the ability to make a title and a little legend. Plus it puts the percents inside each box. So chart title, I can say this is test grades. My legend, I can click and I right click again. I want to select that data just like I did for my other legend. I'm changing the label and I can change it to either of these labels I want. It doesn't matter which one. In this case I'll just do letter grades. So if I look, it tells me that 14% have an F, 14% have a D, about 20 to 21% have a C, 31% have a B, and 21% have an A. And if I look at my relative frequencies here, they match up. And that's really a nice feature about the pie chart versus the relative frequency. I can see both of those together.